My name is Madelyn Hammond, otherwise known as Hollywood's Job Whisperer, and I'm very excited to have Lisa Kaye with us today. Lisa has spent over 20 years in HR and executive recruiting and worked for some of the best companies in the world, including Live Nation, Guitar Center, OWN, The Hollywood Reporter, and many, many more. And why I'm especially happy to have her with us is she has a very broad and vast and deep knowledge of e-commerce, tech, TV, film, hospitality, retail, and even live entertainment. So we're really pleased to have you with us. So thanks for joining us, Lisa.
Thank you, Madelyn, and welcome. Hi, everybody.
Great to be here. Hi, everybody. So Lisa, first, I just wanted to ask you, what was it that made you decide to start your own company and launch your own firm?
Yeah, it was not an elegant solution or transition or decision. I thought I was in the best job I'd ever been in. I was one of 6 executives, the only female executive on the senior management team running a $1 billion entertainment company. And I felt like, wow, this is great. Well, things that come into your life that are out of your control, you just have to kind of pivot. And even though I was forced to pivot, I left the company because of a senior management change at the time, which was really hard for everybody involved, created a very, very toxic work environment. A lot of what people are dealing with today in terms of culture and a lot of the social issues that are coming up sort of hit broadside about 17 years ago. And I didn't make a conscious decision to leave, but I knew it was the right decision, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I was in transition. I was in my late 30s at the time, still young enough. And I decided to do things that I'd never done before. I launched the website. I launched Greenlight Jobs. It was the early 2000s, the start of the internet. People are like, oh my God, if you do anything with a .com, you're out of your mind. Right. So I leaped and took a risk and took all of my years of HR experience and management and figured, just started carving a path for myself.
So now I want to fast forward you, if I could, and take you to present time. Now here we are. Many people are furloughed, laid off. We have a pandemic obviously going on. And I just wondered what you thought about hiring. What's happening? I feel like that companies are being more strategic maybe, and they're not hiring same, but really they have the opportunity now to look at their org chart and decide if they want to do something differently. What do you think about that? Am I right?
You are absolutely right. It's a little bit all over the place. I mean, in California specifically, we were told back in June that, the entertainment industry specifically can open up again. Well, that really hasn't happened. Companies are still grappling with what does that mean? What does that look like, both from a behind the scenes production, in front of the scenes production. It has affected concerts. My old employer, Live Nation, is going through a major reorganization right now. Yeah. Other clients of mine, like AEG and DC Dick Clark Productions, which does all of the award shows, everyone is in a state of not sure how I do it. We got the green light, but what does that mean to us? Right. So they're rethinking current staff, they're rethinking future staff, they're rethinking how they do a business, because no one's giving them the confidence or the direction to say this is going to be over in 3 months and you can go back to, business as usual. I don't think business as usual is going to exist much the way we knew.
Are there a couple tips, 1 or 2 tips that you recommend that people do that is particularly important when doing an interview virtually by Zoom or Skype or even, God forbid, FaceTime?
Well, environment, right? Make sure, you're not sitting in your bed, which a lot of people do, in your pajamas or eating breakfast or whatever, got the TV on. Right. I think we've gotten really comfortable working from home. But what does that look like on the other side of it? So you got to show up like you're really going in for an interview, as if you were walking into somebody's office. So create an environment that looks professional. But I think the most important thing that anyone interviewing for a job, regardless of what level it is flexibility. Understanding that employers right now are struggling with We don't know necessarily how to manage people remotely. We don't know what that should look like. We don't know what that experience, that onboarding experience for you needs to be. So coming to the table, being specific about what it's going to take to do the job, what you think you might need, and how flexible you are in terms of that work environment. You know, maybe you don't have a 9 to 5 set schedule. Maybe, you know, you work in the mornings, you take breaks in the afternoon, and they want you back again after 3 o'clock for a few hours. Making sure your tech is up to date, making sure you have the right technology that's going to allow the right platforms, and ask the companies, what platforms do you use? I mean, is it GoToMeeting? Is it WebEx? Is it Zoom? Is it FaceTime? Staying on top of that right now from a technology standpoint is crucial, because it will make or break your ability to present yourself effectively for anything.
Yes, agreed. And you have to can't be afraid of it. And if you're not familiar with some of these platforms, get familiar with them before. Getting back to the interview, I wanted to ask if there was, in your opinion, you've seen a lot of resumes, obviously from your experience in HR and recruiting. Is there one or two things that you can recommend that are the definite have to do, whether it's do your research, whether it's have good follow-up, but your two best interview tips that you can give people listening?
As much as you can do your research beforehand in terms of the specific job that you're interviewing for, and making sure there are at least one or two salient points in your resume that speak directly to the job posting or the job description. Targeting specifically what that skill set is crucial, because they are looking for that. And then I always say size and scope. You know, how big was your job? How much experience did you have? How much were you able to affect change or touch, whether it was financially, whether it was ratings, whether it was production, whether it was retail, whatever area of focus you are looking for is, tell us the impact of what your contributions allowed you to do for that company, because that's something that people can grab onto. Oh, that's what we need here. You know, that would be great.
You know, when you said everyone's trying to figure it out and what that landscape looks like, I think people also have to be patient. Sometimes these things take a while because they're doing a restructure and maybe they're hiring for the first time a particular position. Oftentimes we fall back into our old habits like we used to, which is, why haven't I heard? And it's just a different time schedule. Do you agree with that?
Yes, it's not the same cadence that they used to have. So their sense of urgency or their sense of immediate need is different than it used to be. And allowing yourself to understand what their priorities are and being patient about the process is also your ability to be flexible and allowing you to show up in a much more, you know, comfortable way for them. And, you know, right now, a lot of jobs are on hold, quite frankly, because companies, again, are still reevaluating what their needs are. Not to say that people aren't getting jobs, they are getting jobs, but that cadence and that sense of urgency has definitely been impacted by what's happening today.
Understood. And it's being sensitive also, because the person you're talking to may have issues with family for homeschooling, or there may be things going on in their particular life. And in addition to the fact that things are crazy from a work environment. So I think it's having that sensitivity that it's a different world. So I wanted to ask you, if someone were interviewing and then everything's going great and the interviewer said, send me some references. How many references do you think someone should provide? I usually say 5, but I'm curious to know what you think. And also if it should be a good mix, current jobs, past jobs, any sort of guidelines you can give us on references.
Yeah, I say 3 to 5 is the normal, but I have seen some clients say they want 10, which I think is a little bit crazy.
Right.
But it happens. So be prepared to have more than 3 to 5 references. They should be professional. They should not be your friend, your teacher, your unless obviously you don't have a lot of wealth of experience and, you know, you may have done a few internships or you may have done work through school, then those would be appropriate. But find a common theme in terms of your references as it relates to supervisors. You know, have a mix. So you have maybe 1 or 2 supervisors, you maybe have a peer. And if you were supervising anybody and you're applying for a supervisory job, it's always good to have a subordinate. Sometimes if you don't have that, also a vendor contact would be good. So someone you may have worked on with on the outside, whether it was a client or a vendor, would be also appropriate, again, depending on the type of job you're applying for. But I'd say 3 to 5 is usually a pretty good place to land.
And then also you mentioned about internships. So do you have any tips for grads? I imagine the job market now must be daunting, but also there's a lot of entry-level positions, I think, that if they haven't already are going to start to appear. So what's your thoughts about recent grads?
Toughest job market I've seen graduates coming into. Not only those that are graduating, but I have people who are, graduating law school, can't even take their bar. I mean, it's impacting in a very significant way. But the old-fashioned way of doing things is still probably your best bet, meaning leverage your network, whoever you know. I don't care if it's a friend of your parents or your wife, your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever. Leverage who you know. Find out where those jobs are. Get the list of the companies your top companies that you want to work for. Do the research. Go on LinkedIn. Go on Indeed. Figure out where those job opportunities are.
Speaking of LinkedIn, when you're doing recruiting, are there other sites that you check beside LinkedIn? I know LinkedIn is very, very popular amongst people looking for potential employees, but is there another site that people should know about?
I think you go to the employer sites. For larger companies, the employer site is your best bet. Also, through your network, a lot of jobs aren't posted. A lot of jobs are, they're still thinking about it, or they haven't even gotten approval to do something, but they need the help. Again, leveraging your network to allow you to get a foot in the door even before those jobs get posted is important. And that really speaks to your ability to be patient about the process, but also to be very, very strategic about the way in which you approach your network and the information that you learn in the industry, reading up on a company, reading up on an industry, and figuring out how your skill sets can leverage appropriately for what that company may be looking for, even though they may not even have the job posted.
But be strategic, meaning not pushy, be sensitive, do your homework, not appear desperate. Do you agree?
Not appear desperate, but you do have to be pretty tenacious. I mean, the days of you just sitting back and waiting for the phone to ring, or employers looking for you is not part of the real work world now. You got to be out there. You got to be a little bit pushy.
Let's talk about, you mentioned about recent grads. I want to talk about, say, the over 50 market, and I wanted to ask your opinion if any suggestions during this. I can't even call it downtime because so many people are very, very busy, but do you have suggestions that someone may be looking for a job or starting to look for a job? Should they take a social media class if they're not as adept as they wish they were? Are there suggestions that you feel that more mature potential employees should take advantage of?
The tech issue is definitely something that they need to pay attention to. I know a lot of executives who are scrambling with Zoom, the calendar invite didn't hit my calendar, so I didn't know about the meeting, or I didn't know about the interview. They're going to have to be a little bit more self-sufficient than ordinarily. If they've been used to having an assistant or used to having, an IT department to rely on, that's not the case anymore. So you're really going to have to be up to speed on that. So taking the time and making the investment and learning that technology, and again, being flexible about the different platforms that are out there is important. Also, not being focused on just full-time employment, looking at project work, looking at ways in which you can offer your skill set. It might be free. You might say, hey, look, I'll be an advisor for you on ABC, and that could potentially lead to some work. So again, thinking differently about the traditional work environment for people who are more experienced in their careers and are looking to re-enter the workplace again, is going to be an essential component in their ability to be able to not only leverage their network, but get a job offer, even if it's consulting or project work.
Right. I think it's great advice, especially consulting until you get something. You're right. It could lead to something, but it also puts you out there, puts you back in the game so that you're talking to other people, which could then lead to something. But I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
Even joining boards and not-for-profit things that you might not ordinarily think about, or say, oh gee, I didn't have time to do that because I was so busy at work. Those are also areas and opportunities that will help you make those necessary connections that'll hopefully land you a job.
Getting back to the social media component, how important do you feel that your followers on Instagram or Facebook or any other of the social platforms are for someone looking for a job?
So if I know there is a finalist for a job and I want to kick the tires, so to speak, to make sure that, I've vetted them properly, that is definitely part of my vetting process. I have had to tell people to take certain things down when I found them, or change them, or do something that I felt could be potentially detrimental to their ability to get a job. So yeah, and I'm not the only one looking, the employers are looking too. So and stuff is out there historically for a while, so you just have to be really, really careful. I tell people, if you have a Facebook page or other Instagram page, have a personal one and have a professional one. If you're able to do that, because people do check that out, especially now.
I think, yes, I agree with you. I know someone that didn't get a job because the resume posted on LinkedIn did not match the resume that they submitted to the potential employer. So some people really check dates. They really look at things to see, not that they think there might be something amiss, but it's people have to check people out thoroughly these days, because you don't want to get into something and then not be able to get out of it.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because a lot of times I'll be coaching people on their resumes and helping them write their resumes, and they just want to go to the LinkedIn profile. I'm like, look, let's do the resume first, because literally everything we put on this piece of paper goes on your link. That becomes your LinkedIn profile. And some people do it the other way around and they forget, or they're not as detailed. And you're right, it does come back. It does come back as a questionable, or like, you know what, this doesn't map out. And people don't have the time to do that kind of stuff up front. So yeah, it's got that integrity has got to be there for sure.
So many people have asked me how to answer this question. I'm curious to see what your take is. A lot of people think this is the worst interview question, and that's when you're asked, so tell me something, Lisa, about yourself that might not be so great. How do you suggest people answer that?
Those questions are always, those are like those horrible trick questions.
Right.
And I always coach people to kind of turn it around a little bit and say, well, let me answer it this way. Let me tell you about an experience that I felt I learned from. And you could talk about something, how you handled a particular situation that may not have been something you were used to doing or comfortable doing, but somehow it led to a result that benefited you or benefited the situation. So it's basically taking this sort of negative question and turning it into sort of a positive results question about how you handle adversity, or how you handle something, or how you've learned from something in your personal and or professional experience that helped you along the way.
I like that. That's good, because you're right. There is no real answer to that. But if you tell a story, it can be very revealing, and then it can lead to something better. Let's talk about that. What is the biggest mistake that you think interviewers make when interviewing potential employees?
Oh, this is an easy one. They talk too much. Instead of focusing on the candidate, they'll sit there and talk about the job, or they'll talk about the company, or they'll talk about the culture. They'll go into a 20-minute diatribe about God knows what, and the candidate is just sitting there left to like nod and listen. And then they have like 5 or 10 minutes left to the interview. It's like, okay, well, tell us about yourself, or tell us why you think you'd be great for this job. And then you're like panic going, okay, like, where do I start? This is supposed to be a two-way conversation, not a one-way conversation. And they think by telling you everything there is to tell you, that is their obligation to let you know that they've done their job in explaining the position to you. It's not about that. It's really about understanding, is this person sitting across the desk from me or a Zoom the right person for this company?
Also, I think when interviewing and when asked a question, though, from an interviewer saying, well, do you have any questions for me? rather than some big broad like, well, what's your vision for the company for the next 20 years, which is too broad, to really kind of hone it in and bring it more towards something that is easily answerable for the person, but yet engaging. Like, well, how do you see this job or improving from the last person that had it or something like that? Because I have had situations where I've heard that potential employees will ask these crazy open-ended questions, and that again eats up a lot of time and doesn't tell you much more about the job. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. Having a list of 5 to 10 questions whether you get to all of them or not, pre-interview is important. You may only get one shot at this. You have a captive audience right now, and you got to do the most to impress them in that very, very short period of time, whether it's through Zoom or whatever means you're interviewing for the position. And not droning on about yourself or about, you're like basically reading your entire resume, because that, on the opposite side of the desk, that's the same problem, right? You're not really getting to why you're qualified for this job, why you are even interested in this company,
Right.
What skills you have that you think you're the perfect person for this job. And really focusing on those things during that short window is key to whether or not you're going to get a job offer.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree more. Let me ask you something. I've read that you were very involved with the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in their diversity and inclusion program. And I was curious what your take is about companies really taking the time and developing programs to recruit more women, people of color. What's your take on it? Do you feel like there's really a change that's going on?
I think there will be a change. I think we're in the middle of that change happening. I think the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Science Gold Program was launched in 2017. It was really an intern program for underrepresented students who wanted a break, who didn't have the network to leverage. They could have been in Idaho or Indiana or Vermont, and they wanted a job in Hollywood. And how does that work? Partnering with the studios allowed us to create a program that really targeted and allowed students to be able to network in ways that gave them exposure that they never would have had. I think companies now are looking similarly to broaden their reach, not just with HCBUs, the historically Black college and universities, but also through other organizations and networks. I think they're doing more now in trying to really focus on what that outreach looks like. That responsibility, I think, is heightened during all of this social unrest and focus on making sure that companies are being held accountable for the way in which they recruit, attract, and retain talent, and not just, white talent or not diverse talent in any category. But I think companies are still they're just in the throes of it. I mean, a lot of them will say, "Oh, we've been doing it for years," and but obviously the numbers speak for themselves. And when you look at most organizations that most in the entertainment, media, and technology industries specifically are not diverse.
Right.
So I think we're entering a very, very unique time right now where companies are going to be held to a higher standard in measuring just how successful they are and continue to be in these in really creating a diverse and inclusive culture. So it's going to be, I think we're at the forefront of it. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the next few years.
Well, that's encouraging news. It's good, but I'm glad that you said we're in the throes of it. We're nowhere near at the end, but it's evolving, but it is happening, and that's good news.
Yeah. Holding their feet to the fire.
That's right, exactly. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and sharing your experience and knowledge and most of all, encouragement. So before we wrap it up, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to offer one piece of advice for those out there that might be furloughed or laid off or just decided they need a change.
Keep all options on the table. Take nothing off, even if it's something you never in your wildest dreams considered you'd be looking at it, thinking about it. don't shut it down. Don't close the door to anything. You never know where your next career is going to start. There's a new job that's on the market now called a COVID compliance officer. Who on earth would have ever thought 6 months ago that that was a thing? And it's a big thing, especially in this industry. There are, production companies don't know how to get started. You could go in there and start telling people what to do. Wear your mask, wear your sanitizer, whatever. But all I'm saying is keep your options open, because the next opportunity could come from someplace totally unexpected and could wind up being a really, really great thing.
Well, that's a great way to wrap it up. So thanks again, Lisa. Appreciate so much. And
Thanks, everybody.
the job you're doing, helping people.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.